Hello everyone, how are you diddling? It's me, Alan, and welcome to the Ubuntu Podcast, Season 12, Episode 9. This week we've got a fun-packed show full of news, community news, and lots of other bits and bobs. But first of all, let me introduce you to my good friends who join me on this escapade. This week we have Martin. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Alan. You totally can't pull off a how you diddling.
Can I not?
No.
Oh, okay. I'll try harder next time. And Mark, hello. How you diddling?
I'm diddling well, thank you.
Excellent. I used to love watching, was it Alexi Sale? He did a comedy show. How you diddling? I think it was. Maybe not.
No, it wasn't that. That wasn't his catchphrase.
No, it was. He was playing the part of a comedian. I'm not losing it, am I? It was Alexi Sale. Yeah, it was. He was a comedian. He was a warm-up act for a major act, and it was always in front of the audience, and he'd go, "Ow, you diddling?" And everyone would be like, ugh. And I think he was kipping in his Jag. His wife had kicked him out. Anyway, what have you been up to, Mark?
I have been doing some cabling.
Oh. Is this to the server that's down in the garage?
No, that's all cabled. But when I did that cabling, I wanted to cable to the side of my lounge, which doesn't currently have a network cable going to it, which would have involved running it down the stairs. And I've been puzzling for about 6 months how I can run a cable down the stairs discreetly. And someone in our Telegram group said, "Oh, well, you could go through the external wall." And I thought, well, I can't really do that because I live in a terrace, unless I go like up into the loft and then all the way across the loft and out through the soffit and then down the back wall and then through the back wall into where I want to put my desk. So that's what I did.
Oh.
Mark, I can't help but notice you've given a lot of details away to potential illustrators of the the layout of your home for our as yet unannounced competition.
Yeah, well, fill your boots with that information.
Awesome. Martin, what have you been doing?
I have been going RGB to the max.
Oh.
Just on my keyboard and my mouse.
Is this because you're elite gamer?
I play games. I play games badly. I would never qualify myself as a elite gamer by any stretch, but I've replaced my keyboard recently and it does RGB.
Ooh. I got a private unboxing of this. Another one of these where I said to Martin, "What's in that box?" And he went, "Oh," and then lifted it up and started unpacking it in front of me while we were having a chat. I mean, some would say meeting, but I'll say chat. And then started pressing the keys and telling me how nice the keys feel, and then telling me some colour of cherry key, and it's a bit like another colour of cherry key. And I don't understand all these different colours of cherry key. I know they're all different, but
these are yellow switches, and I think yellow switches are the future.
I notice it's validated by esports.
Yeah, isn't it weird, right? So I've got no interest in esports whatsoever, but I find that a lot of these like now gaming keyboards are really good for people that spend their whole day typing on a keyboard in some kind of professional capacity, not in a WASD kill your enemy capacity. So my last keyboard was a wireless gaming keyboard in air quotes. And it was very fast and responsive and all the rest of it. But then a few weeks ago, it started spitting out double key presses for some of the key presses, and that wouldn't do.
Is that for double tap to kill, or is that not what you were doing?
Oh no, it was just infuriating. It was all the letters that you really don't want it to be double duplicated as well. So I've now got a Razer Black Widow Tournament Edition Chroma keyboard, which now sits alongside my previously existing Lancehead Tournament Edition Razer mouse, and the keyboard is supported using OpenRazer and Polychromatic, which are tools to configure the light show. And there is a pull request in the GitHub repository for OpenRazer that adds support for the mouse that I have. So I've built a patched version of that so that I can configure my mouse. And I could tell you how it looks like, unicorns farting rainbows, but in actual fact, I just have both of them doing a solid red RGB show because it matches my Kempston joystick and my QuickShot 2 turbo joysticks and my Focusrite and also the colour of the cable on my headphones. So apparently I've gravitated towards black and red as my accent colours for my workstation.
Let's just gloss over the stupid joysticks. You've set it to red RGB. You mean R?
Well, it's just R. In fact, on the keyboard, it's 50% R, and on the mouse, it's 75% R. And so I have 16 million colours at my disposal, but I've just settled on R.
Brilliant. Let's get on with the nonsense. And first up in the community news and maybe events, we have a piece of software called Magnus, which sounds very forceful and important. And this was written by a friend of the show, Stuart Langridge. And it's a screen magnifier application. And I discovered this via the Ubuntu MATE Twitter account. So that's probably you, Martin, who tweeted about this, I would imagine.
It might have been me.
Because I don't have access to that Twitter account.
No, you don't have that. Yeah, so it was probably me, in which case, yes.
So what's this then?
So Stuart's got another application called Pick, which is a colour picker. And it has a magnifying glass to enable you to precisely select the pixel that you want to sample the colour from, which is a very useful feature. And as soon as I saw this, I thought, oh my goodness, this is basically a screen magnifier, which has been the missing piece in sort of the accessibility story for the Mate desktop forever. So I spoke to Stuart and I said, could you strip out all of the colour picking stuff and just turn it into a screen magnifier, which he did about a week ago. And then I've been working on knocking it into a shape where it can be packaged. So it's now been packaged and it's available. We have links in the show so you can go and get this thing. But I've knocked it up so it's available in a PPA. So people who are interested in using this on a GTK desktop, it's not specifically for Ubuntu Mate, any GTK desktop will do.
So the fun thing about the Colour Picker app, I was helping Stuart test this thing, and I was testing it on my laptop, and it wasn't behaving quite the way he was anticipating. Some would call that a bug. And it's weird because the whole point of it is you choose the little pipette thing to go and find a colour, and the magnifier appears, but it hides its own window, minimises its own window so that it doesn't get in the way of the thing you want to pick the colour from. But unfortunately, for some reason, when the window hides, so does the magnifier. So you can't actually, you have to click the pipette thing, the window minimises, then you have to unminimize it so that you get the picker when you put the mouse. That was quite a fun bit of debugging we were doing for about an hour last week.
It is interesting that issue may not exist anymore because for Magnus, when Magnus is focused over itself, it just gives you the transparent hatch pattern. So it doesn't minimize itself. It just shows you there's nothing to see here because you're looking at me.
Right.
So maybe Stuart has incorporated that into Pick by now, but I don't know because I haven't looked at it.
Cool. And you said there's a PPA. Why is it not a snap?
It's not a snap because I made the PPA in my lunch break today, and a snap is forthcoming. So we're gonna make a snap as well. But I needed to create Debian packaging and submit that to the Debian project because I need to seed this in the distro and all that sort of stuff. But a snap is coming.
You're welcome to steal the Snapcraft YAML I made for him for Pick.
That would actually probably be 9/10 of the way I need to go. So yes, thank you for that. I will do that. Yes.
Search and replace. You're done. Speaking of Ubuntu Mate, is there some news of a new video player coming in 1910?
Yeah, well, there was yesterday, and then today, maybe not.
Up to the minute news we have here on this show.
Oh, yeah, quite literally. I wrote a post on the Ubuntu Mate Patreon to explain the last month's development activities. And one of the things we've been looking at within the team is potentially switching VLC out and replacing it with gnome-mpv.
Ooh, why is that? Doesn't everyone love VLC and nobody uses gnome-mpv?
Well, last time I asked, yes, everyone loves VLC, and certainly VLC is still very popular. But this time when I asked and I said, shall we do this? Everyone said, I'm already using gnome-mpv, which was surprising to me because I was expecting massive pushback, and that isn't what I got. So the main reason for wanting to switch out is gnome-mpv offers all the same compatibility in terms of the media format playback support and all of the acceleration capabilities that exist and all of that stuff. But it's a GTK3 application, so it obviously fits in with the Mate desktop much better than VLC, which is ostensibly a Qt application.
It's funny because I don't actually use VLC anymore. I have it installed, but if I'm ever opening a movie, I'll just use MPV from the command line, not the gnome-mpv. I'll just type MPV and then the file name because I tend to drive it from the command line. I think I only ever use VLC and I'm using a Qt desktop. It's a very cute desktop, but I only use VLC if I'm opening a capture card or something like that, and I want to use the menus in VLC. So I think VLC certainly has a place for like advanced stuff, but I guess if all you want to do is just open a video and play it, MPV and gnome-mpv are, perfectly adequate, right?
Exactly. It's exactly my thinking, and it does that job very well, and it doesn't overwhelm you with options and preferences and all the rest of it. And for those of you that, want VLC, then that's just a click away in the software boutique and will remain to be so.
Anything else coming there?
We're adding a notification center finally. So that's landed, and we're talking to the upstream developer for that. And we're going to use some of our crowdfunding money to sponsor him to develop some features to build that facility out.
Is that similar to KDE's thing where it sort of keeps the history of notifications and you can go back and clear stuff and look at what you've had in the past?
Exactly that. Yeah, exactly that.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I mean, I used to have something that I hacked together in the past, and I really missed it, and I found it a really useful tool. It's just great, and it has blacklisting, so you can tell it not to log every Spotify track change request that you get told about and all that sort of thing. And then Ubuntu's obviously adding NVIDIA drivers for offline install on the ISO, and I've done that work, and I think some of the other flavors have as well. And we're also adding invisible window corners to the window manager, which basically means you don't have to precisely grab the window corners pixel perfect in order to resize the windows anymore.
Excellent. Okay, Mark, what's new in LibreOffice?
Well, LibreOffice 3.6 is new in LibreOffice.
Don't think so. I think you mean 6.3.
6.3 is new in LibreOffice, but I'll tell you what's old in LibreOffice, and that's 32-bit support.
Stinky 32-bit. Nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that anymore.
The Document Foundation are no longer going to be providing and supporting 32-bit x86 builds of LibreOffice. That doesn't mean that they're removing support for 32-bit. It's just that they're not going to be building it. So I suppose if a 32-bit distribution really, really wanted it, they could build it themselves, or they'd have to rely on alternative Office software.
I know we've got LibreOffice in the archive, and I had a quick look before we started recording, and as you'd expect, because 6.3 is, I think it's only on beta at the moment. It's not actually final release. We've got 6.2 in the archive, and there is an x86 32-bit build of LibreOffice. So I assume at the moment we still support 32-bit, but this kind of throws weight behind what a lot of people are doing, which is moving away from 32-bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's many reasons. The lack of hardware and the ability to test it because people don't have the hardware. And when there are significant bugs, it's difficult to fix the bugs because nobody has the hardware in order to validate that the fixes are accurate. So Yeah, it's a difficult situation, and it's done us well for what now? I think we said at FOSS Talk Live last year it was 40 years that the x86 standard had been around. So yeah, after 40 years, I think it's time we put it in its zinc welded coffin and bury it in cement somewhere in the wilderness and move on.
I heard life begins at 40. Maybe not.
I'll look forward to that.
Shut up. Oh dear, Martin, save me from him.
I can't possibly do that, but we spoke about this a couple of shows ago. But the Ubuntu flavors, so this is the not Ubuntu proper flavors. So Ubuntu, Lubuntu, Kubuntu, Ubuntu Mate, Ubuntu Studio, and Ubuntu Chillin'. We all had a online meetup. I think it was a week ago or maybe 2 weeks ago now. I can't quite remember. And we talked about each of our plans for the 1910 cycle and introduced some of us to each other because some of us hadn't met before, and figured out how we were all going to collaborate a bit better. And it was really interesting, and it threw up a couple of interesting discussion points.
So was this an in-person meetup or was this an online thing?
It was online, but one of the discussion points is we should do this in person. So we'll have to have a think about how we organise the logistics around that. But it was interesting because there was a lot of discussion about where the blockers were for the flavours and what they were struggling with. And it turns out Debian packaging is hard.
No way.
And that was something I heard a lot. And also that the Ubuntu wiki needs an overhaul. People felt that the Ubuntu wiki was not an efficient tool for creating and maintaining documentation.
It's got a bit long in the tooth. We've lamented many times over the years that it would be good if we could give the Ubuntu wiki a bit of love. It's still running a piece of Python software called Moin that basically nobody uses, but it's got some integration into Ubuntu SSO so that you can log in with your SSO account, and that means you only need to sign up for Ubuntu SSO and then you've got access to the wiki. But it also means we can add access control to prevent spammers from signing up, because we used to have a real problem about 4 or 5 years ago with people signing up for Ubuntu wiki accounts and just filling the wiki with spam and replacing the homepage and all that kind of stuff. So we've kind of reined in who can who can edit the wiki, and that's actually made it less useful because there's a real barrier. I mean, you need a barrier to stop spammers, but there's a real barrier that makes it not as easy to get drive-by edits, because by the time someone has decided they want to and they sign up for SSO, and then they have to join a special team. And so it would be good if we could summon up the energy from some people to migrate away from Moin. I'd personally move to MediaWiki simply because that's what everyone else uses. I realize there are some strong opinions to use other wikis, but I think moving away from Moin to MediaWiki makes sense. And then you've got to decide whether you do a scorched earth and start again with a brand new wiki, or try and migrate the pages over or whatever. But I've looked into this repeatedly over the years, and there are scripts and tools that can help you migrate from one wiki to another. And it is possible for us to go from Moin to MediaWiki in a semi-automatic fashion with a bit of cleanup. But I think we need to get some community people together and figure out if this is something we want to do.
Maybe this is a session we should have at UbuCon Europe to discuss that, because all of the right people will be at that event.
Well, all of them except
IS,
the IS, the canonical IS people who host the thing, and there are certain requirements they have. Maybe we could get someone from there to give us the lowdown on what they require. But yeah, it's certainly something that's bothered me for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can't contribute to the wiki unless you're an Ubuntu member. And to become an Ubuntu member, you need to demonstrate sustained contribution for 6 months.
That's not true. You can edit the wiki. You don't need to be a member. You just need to be a member of a specific team on Launchpad. You don't have to have But the problem is that team is non-obvious. It's called Ubuntu Wiki Editors, but it's just an extra hoop. It's not like MediaWiki on Wikipedia, where you can just go in and edit any page you like from any IP address without an account. It's a bit of a stumbling block. So I'd be interested to hear from other people who've managed migrations of wikis from one platform to another, especially ones where they have more than, 40,000 pages on their wiki, because we have quite a lot. Anyway, that's the end of that. We've got an event coming up, super soon.
We have Force Talk Live coming up this weekend, this Saturday, the 8th of June. So it might have already happened by the time you hear this, but if it hasn't already happened, then come along. It's at the Harrison pub near King's Cross. And we've been told the pub is open from 12 this year, and it'll be serving food from 12:30. So we can all meet up there and chat all afternoon.
Excellent.
This sounds dangerous for presenters, open at 12:30.
Well, you just had to control yourself, Martin.
I can't control myself when I get to a pub. That's the problem.
I don't think they do Long Island iced tea.
Still a problem.
Yeah, maybe if there are any tickets left, you can come along. And if there aren't, maybe you could sit around in the pub with us, even without a ticket, and not go downstairs and see the show, because it'd be quite packed, I would think.
I did just release 2 tickets, which it turned out I didn't need.
Okay, cool. All right, that's the end of the community news. And now it's time for the big boy news. First up, Martin, stop theming my app.
Yeah, this isn't big boy news. This is a bunch of whiny developers who think they've got an opinion they want to share in all the wrong ways. So, stop theming my app.io or .com or something hipster, I don't know. A group of people creating GTK applications decided that the best way to engage with their opinion about how the rest of the community should behave was to write an open letter and create a GitHub account and have a bit of a moan in the open, rather than take to the IRC channels and the mailing lists and the open source conferences that exist around the GNOME community to discuss their ails and opinions in a constructive way.
So let's take a step back. These are developers of GTK GNOME apps who don't like that they test their application, or they build their application using one particular theme, probably the default GNOME theme using Adwaita.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is that how you pronounce it?
Oh, well, that's how I pronounce it.
That's how I pronounce it as well.
And Linux distributions, such as, Ubuntu and Pop! OS, ship other themes as default, and so their applications look different on different distributions. They fit with the distribution and they don't look like the original developer intended. And so their complaint is really that they get bug reports from people complaining that their application doesn't look right, when from their perspective, no, it's not looking right because I designed it to look like Adwaita. But I can see their point. I can see why, if you design, they make a point on the website that nobody reskins Atom or Telegram, or Spotify.
No, actually, Telegram's a bad example because they do. You can download themes for Telegram, and I use one which is an Ubuntu Mate theme.
It's distributions is the key. That's the target of this. It's not that you could download a theme for Telegram. It's that the Linux distributions don't modify the app, those applications. That's the point they're making.
I understand that. So my feeling about this is that there are a few ways in which the various Linux distributions can differentiate themselves from one another. And one of the fundamental facilities that GTK offers developers is the fact that it's themable. And if a distribution takes advantage of that capability to differentiate themselves from the other distributions, then why is that a bad thing? It's not like you're moving the OK button from where you expect the OK button to be found to some completely random position on the screen. You are just changing its styling, perhaps colouring, whether or not it uses symbolic icons or coloured icons, that sort of thing. So this, don't theme my app. I just don't get it. Are you saying that we should have no themes at all? Because if that's what you're advocating for, you need to remember that GNOME is one implementation that uses the GTK toolkit, and there are many other projects that use GTK as a general purpose toolkit that don't want to adhere to the style guidelines of GNOME.
Can you think of one of those?
I can think of many. Do you want me to say it out loud?
No, I don't. You don't need to. I'm mixed about this. I think they have an argument to make. I think the approach is wrong. Doing an open letter, which kind of points the finger at distributions that distribute their application and bring users to those applications. It feels to me like a lot of these could be theme bugs. They certainly pointed out some ways in which the themes are broken. It's like, well, approach the people who make the theme and get it fixed. It feels like the approach is just wrong.
It is.
I hope they get an opportunity to step back and talk to people behind the scenes, the right people, to get whatever those bugs are fixed. I'm not sure that registering an entire domain, setting up a GitHub project and going through the design of a web page is the right approach. But
yeah, it felt a bit egotistical to me. And also, that I feel like they overinflated their numbers. There are several applications represented there, of which there are half a dozen developers attributed to, who have never had a release of their software. They're just a Git repository somewhere on the internet with no release. It's never made it into a distribution of any sort, and they're concerned about how it harms their brand. Whereas there is another, several communities of people who are building themes for distributions who have got an audience of users, and I feel that they have an equal right to express themselves creatively as well.
Okay, well, we'll look forward to seeing how that develops, and we'll check back in with that soon, no doubt. Next up on the news, the MNT. I think it's just MNT. I don't think you're supposed to pronounce it Mount. I never know how to pronounce these things. Reform is an open source DIY laptop for hacking, customization, and privacy. And I think we mentioned this a while ago, maybe a year or so ago. It's available on crowdsupply.com, or rather it's coming soon on crowdsupply.com. And it's a fully open source laptop. If you look at the marketing pictures for it, it's quite chunky because it's not manufactured in huge volume, and it's made mostly of components that you can buy off the shelf, such as standard 18650 battery cells that you can replace yourself. It uses an ARM-based processor, IMX8M, and other bits and pieces. But I thought I'd mention it because I know a lot of our listeners like these kind of open source laptops and the kind of thing where you can hack it together yourself. So I thought I'd chuck a link in there because it's worth taking a look at, because I think it will appeal to our listeners' interests.
And yeah, there's some really good detail here about the sort of next iteration and how they've taken the feedback and redesigned basically each of the modular components to take into account feedback they've had from the sort of first generation. And this is things like the motherboard design and allowing the motherboard they're going to make now to be replaceable with one in the future, which might be based on RISC-V architecture, a better screen, changes to the keyboard, which is a mechanical keyboard, even though it's on a laptop. And they've got a 5-button trackball now. And yeah, it's quite a cool looking machine, to be honest. I'd like to get my hands on one.
That point about RISC-V is really interesting because it's a trend that organizations that have been producing ARM-based SBCs or devices are starting to talk about, in the future we're looking at RISC-V. It's not like now we're making RISC-V hardware, but all of these, not all, but a number of these people that have been making ARM-based things are starting to talk about RISC-V. It feels like we're not at a tipping point yet, but almost, where RISC-V is like this viable platform that people baking these low-cost devices are going to start looking towards.
Yeah, I mean, specifically what they say is when an affordable, high-performing RISC-V chip is released. And I'm going to keep saying RISC-V, not RISC-V, because it says V on the screen.
Okay, then. Moving on, Mark, are you planning to go to the US at all soon?
Possibly never. So yeah, this is a story about even more requirements for a US visa. So new applicants for US visas will soon have to submit social media usernames and 5 years worth of email addresses and phone numbers. This is for basically anyone who's not a diplomat who's going there for work or study or tourism. So presumably they can check up on you and make sure you've not been saying naughty things about their president on social media.
I feel like it's more so they can see what your social graph is and see who is talking to who and who has relationships with who, so that they can chase down that graph and see, well, you're 2 steps away from this guy who once said Allahu Akbar in the street. And so, you're flagged. And you're 3 steps away from this guy who we stopped coming to the US a few years ago. That, I think it's more that kind of thing than actually looking at, whether you post Trump memes or something.
Well, I'm pretty sure that the Great Orange one would get flagged up if he submitted his social accounts for inspection on a visa application.
Yeah. I wonder what would happen if you submitted your Mastodon account and and nothing else.
Well, it'll probably reply with a 404, judging by the rate at which they disappear off the internet.
I like the way it says 5 years worth of email addresses and phone numbers. I've had the same email address and phone number for 20 years. So that's going to be, yeah. No, those really are my addresses.
I'm someone who has never travelled to the US and has less and less inclination to do so the more stuff like this comes about. But you two travel a fair amount there and back. Does this have any impact on you? Does this make you think about whether you want to continue doing that?
I always get wary when I'm standing in the line for US immigration, despite the fact that I've done nothing wrong. It's like that whole, policeman across the street while you're walking down the road, you're thinking, oh, don't come over and speak to me. Because even though you've done nothing wrong, it always feels that an intimidating thing when they start asking you questions, business and pleasure, or how long are you going to be here? I always feel incredibly intimidated and like they could just throw me out. And I hate that. And I realize that, they're protecting their border and protecting their citizen. It's their number one priority and all that stuff. But it's not a pleasant experience to make you feel like that. But it's only for half an hour of your life, a couple of times a year, so it's not really that big a deal.
Having chalked up a black mark against one's name with the US authorities some years ago, curiously, in and out of America has never been a problem for me, but Canada has, and awkwardly, directly after FOSS Talk Live this weekend, Popey and I are getting on a plane to go to Montreal, and I will probably end up going to the special room yet again.
Oh, goody. So we haven't got any time left for the last bit of news, but it turns out Apple are selling a monitor stand for $1,000, but that sounds good, doesn't it? Yes. Let's move on.
Are you a freedom-hating iTunes user? Redeem yourself by helping spread the word about Ubuntu and open source. Leave a rating to tell others what you think of the Ubuntu podcast.
And that's it for Season 12, Episode 9 of the Ubuntu podcast. Thank you very much for listening, if you have been. If you haven't, then it's a bit strange jumping to 31 minutes into the show just to listen to the outro. That would be a bit weird. Anyway, we'll be back next week when we'll be discussing something super important, I'm sure. We'll probably have some command line love and tons of feedback. See you next time. Bye-bye.